And another wonderful, wonderful morning out there to all of you, my dear friends. A wonderful day. It's been raining here as of late, and it seems to be clearing up. This is a very lovely day. But we left off with talks of the millennial reign in Isaiah 12, and it's very lovely. It's quite the amazing thought how Jesus ruling over the world. I mean, these prophets are just so emphatic in the Old Testament about just the millennial reign. And so that got me to pondering. I was like, wait a minute. I mean, this is so utterly important of a time, so amazing of a time that, I mean, and then it comes into perspective, Jesus ruling over this earth for 1,000 years. It's going to be wonderful. I do know something. Every single leader, king, prime minister, whatever you want to call them, every single leader that this world has ever known has never known one like him. He's the top leader of heaven. And I mean, so if he's the best of the best in heaven, just imagine how much greater of a king that he will be over the entire world. I could go on and on about this. It's absolutely incredible of a thought. Isaiah 13, 1 and 2. The burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amoz did see. Now notice how the prophet did see this. I'm going to get a little bit more emphasis on this because so many people today, they say, well, let me tell you what the Lord told me, because they think they're a prophet. Well, they're self-deceived. I used to do that. The prophets of old, they saw these visions. They saw these prophecies. Isaiah talks about how he hears the chariots and he sees them with his own eyes. It's unmistakable that it's from the Lord. Anyway, we'll get into that here in later studies, Lord willing. But this is against Babylon. Lift ye up a banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand that they may go into the gates of the nobles. This prophecy against Babylon, which consists of two parts, the former contained in this chapter, the latter in the next. Now the next chapter is Isaiah 14, and that's where we see, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, and how we learned what we believe is the actual name of Satan. Satan's more of a title, and we believe that his name was Lucifer, meaning the shining one. And this is actually the very beginning of the prophecies against him, but this is more against the nation itself as it is. We'll get into all that. Which consists of two parts. The former contained in this chapter, the latter in the next, was probably delivered as Vitriga has shown in the reign of Ahaz, about 200 years before the completion of it, and 130 years before the Jews were even carried captive to Babylon. Which captivity the prophet does not expressly foretell here, but supposes in the spirit of prophecy as what was actually to take place, whenever he says, and the Medes who are expressly mentioned in Isaiah 13:17, later on in this chapter, as the principal agents in the overthrow of the Babylonian monarchy by which the Jews were to be released from that captivity, were at this time an inconsiderable people. The Medes at this time, very fascinating, just like how Isaiah, he actually mentions Cyrus by name. Cyrus wasn't even alive at the time, but he actually mentions the Medes, and the Medes were not a powerful people, and he says, because he sees the Medes, pardon the expression, but he sees these people in a vision. He sees what they're going to do, just as Elisha actually saw what the king of Syria was going to do to his people. The Medes at the time were a pretty weak people, having been in a state of anarchy ever since the fall of the great Assyrian Empire, which was to come, of which they had made a part of under Sardanapalus, and did not become a kingdom till about the 17th year of Hezekiah. Now the prophecy continues, I have commanded my sanctified ones, namely the Persians. I have also called my mighty ones for mine anger, even them that rejoice in my highness, like as of a great people. A tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together, the Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven. even the Lord, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as destruction from the Almighty. We're being told about how they'll come from a far country right here. The same phrase is used of Cyrus in Isaiah 46 and 39:3, of Babylon itself in relation to Jerusalem. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt, and they shall be afraid. Pangs and sorrows shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that travaileth. They shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flames. Their faces shall glow or burn like fire. When grief and anguish come upon us, the face becomes inflamed. The face in fear is usually pale. But the idea here is not so much that of fear as of anguish, and perhaps there is mingled also here the idea of indignation against their invaders. Now right here's a good verse to bring this up. Whenever we're reading about this Babylon, keep in the back of your mind the entire time, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. We're actually going to come to that very phrase this week, Lord willing. And that is said of the whole world. So you have to kind of look at this in a sense, even every bit of it, in a little bit of a sense of being symbolic as of what's going to happen in these latter days. Because in the book of Revelation, the whole world has become symbolic, mystical Babylon. So this Babylon back then was just a small scale of what it is all over the world today. And isn't that amazing? That really says something about our world today. How we are so evil. The world, as evil as it's been with the giants in the land and the Moabites and how they burn their babies back then, and now we murder the babies in the womb by the millions. It's never been as evil of a time as we see it right now, my friends. The world has never been known as Babylon, all of it Babylon, until our day. Now that's very telling for all the evil that's came before us. And now we see the greatest persecution on the Jews ever has come in our day. Just in the past 100 years, we see it with the Holocaust. And verse 9, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. Nature sympathizes with her Lord. When he is angry, the light of the heavens grows dark. So it was at the crucifixion of Christ. So it will be at the end of the world. So it is often, if not always, at the time of great judgments. And I will punish the world. Catch that, the world, for their evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. The arrogancy of the proud, that sounds like, stopping Satan, doesn't it? Well, he actually does that at the second coming of Christ. He's cast into the pit for 1,000 years. And will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. I will make a man more precious than fine gold, meaning rare, because so many are going to die. Even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. Ophir, way down here, known for their great gold supply. Men will be so slaughtered throughout the whole world by the time of the second coming that, there'll hardly be any left. And the commentators agree about how this is going beyond the destruction of Babylon and becomes a general warning to the wicked of all countries. The commentators see that as well. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. And it shall be as the chased roe, or a deer fleeing, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. Every one that is found shall be thrust through, and every one that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. Their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses shall be spoiled, and their wives ravished. Verse 17, behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, And as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare children. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation, neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. This was not immediately done upon the taking of the city by Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Persian, his nephew, but was fulfilled by degrees. Over time, hundreds and hundreds of years, this actually happened, as is recorded by historians and as appears at this day. Jerome, an ancient historian, around 400 AD, says that in his time it was quite in ruins, the city of Babylon, and that the walls served only for the enclosure of a park or forest for the king's hunting. Now, I got to digging around about what does this place look like today. And where is Babylon now? In 2019, UNESCO designated Babylon as a World Heritage Site. To visit Babylon today, you have to go to Iraq, 55 miles south of Baghdad. Although Saddam Hussein attempted to revive it during the 1970s, he was ultimately unsuccessful due to regional conflicts and wars. Now, Saddam Hussein, the ruler over Iraq, he actually believed that he was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar. Very strange things happened not very long ago, my friends. Here's an actual mural depicting Iraqi President Saddam Hussein with King Nebuchadnezzar at the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. In 1985, Hussein started rebuilding the city on top of the old ruins, investing in both restoration and new construction. Isn't it very strange how they're pumping millions and even probably billions of dollars into rebuilding Babylon? That's very, very strange for these last days. Because of this, some artifacts may well be under the city by now. To the dismay of archaeologists, Hussein inscribed his name on many of the bricks in imitation of Nebuchadnezzar. One inscription reads, "This was built by Saddam Hussein, son of Nebuchadnezzar, to glorify Iraq." Most of Babylon was rebuilt by Saddam Hussein on its old foundations. But pictured here is the original Ishtar Gate. Now, what is the Ishtar Gate? Now, there have been a couple of replicas of this Ishtar Gate, originally in Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, and they're smaller scale, but we'll come to that here in a second. What does Ishtar mean? The massive gate itself is dedicated to the goddess of fertility and love. Ishtar, represented by lions, as you'll see lining the wall. The message was, of course, that Babylon was protected by these gods and that it was so magnificent, so monumental, that you'd waste your time trying to invade it. A reconstruction of the Ishtar Gate and processional way was built at the Pergamon Museum in Berlin out of material excavated by Robert Koldewey and finished in the 1930s. That's very strange to me. In Berlin, right around Hitler's area, I'm not surprised at all. It includes the inscription plaque. It stands 46 feet high, or 14 meters high, and 30 meters, or 100 feet wide. The excavation ran from 1902 to 1914, and during that time, 45 feet of the foundation of the gate was uncovered. Now, there's a smaller reproduction that Saddam Hussein built himself, was built in Iraq under Saddam Hussein as the entrance to a museum that has not been completed, the museum itself. Along with a restored palace, the gate was completed in 1987. This is so telling of just evil people. How Germans back at the time of Hitler rising and all this, how they built this, Saddam Hussein built the evil people. They always want to rebuild these idolatries in the face of God, and it's obvious blasphemy. The replica appears, Saddam's replica appears similar to the restored original, but is notably smaller. The purpose of the replica's construction was an attempt to reconnect to Iraq's history. Now, don't skim over this. They wanted to build back up Babylon. That was the whole purpose of it. Damage to this reproduction has occurred since the Iraq War by U.S. military. And here's just a few more images of how they tried to rebuild it back. Quite astounded, I mean, because whenever you look at it, you'll see people walking around, but now whenever I read about this, there's Some of the kids over there, they graffiti the walls of it, and it's just in ruins. This always happens whenever evil people try to rebuild these cities. So the scripture's telling us how Babylon would be desolate. That actually happened. They've tried to rebuild it, and it stopped. Verse 21, but wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. That's quite strange wording right there. Satyrs being demonic. They say, well, this is also meaning goats, he-goats, whatever. Very possible as well. But I would say plenty of demons probably roam that area because Jesus says that these unclean spirits, they walk about in dry places seeking rest and finding none. What more of a dry place could you get than some decimated city? And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons and their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. Now, just for one final note about how these demons will dwell there, I believe that satyrs is meaning demons, but I also believe that dragons hold this. Anytime that it says dragons in the Old Testament, I'm thinking to myself, that it so just sounds like dinosaurs to me, because everything else you could name, but these dinosaurs were gigantic. Most of them killed during the flood, but I'd say still some of them roamed around. They catch a lot of flack for that. Ken Hovind catches tons of flack for that, but I mean, it's very firm. Even archaeological evidence shows that man dwelled with dinosaurs. And that they'll laugh at us. And here we are telling the truth. Isn't that something? This stupid world. Anyway, thank you all for joining me, my dear friends. We'll leave off on that very positive note. And Lord willing, we're going to be coming to Isaiah 14 very soon. I thank you all for joining me. God, peace be with you. Amen.